Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here with another Options and Play video update. So, ahead of the long weekend, it's time to look forward to the upcoming week, right? Got only like a 4 day week. Monday's off because of the President's Day holiday, so kind of like a condensed round of news in like a shorter stretch. We may have some more headlines over the weekend about this coronavirus, so could really set up like a pretty busy Tuesday once we get back. And, like, not to mention, like you're going to see in a second, a couple of real big names scheduled to report Monday before the open. All right, so um, getting things started, Medtronic. So 4 points. That's what's expected here. It's been a pretty solid name the last few quarters. Beat and raise. Stock rolled over right into trend support. I don't trade this very often, but it does seem if like there's another strong print, maybe it snaps back because pretty well defined uptrend, pretty strong, solid numbers recently. So it seems like maybe if it's good, get a quick snapback, maybe retest the high just from a couple weeks ago, up in like the low 120s. Um, big name also Tuesday morning, Walmart. Like 5.25 or so, in that ballpark. That's what they were looking for. And in addition to being one of the biggest brick and mortar retailer, right? But one of the biggest retailers in general. Um, this is just interesting for a few reasons, right? Because most other brick and mortar names have already guided. A lot of them guide right after the holidays. They get the preliminary sales. Walmart hasn't, all right? So uncertainty there. Um, so holiday quarter, right? Now you got to factor in any potential disruptions from China, right? So more uncertainty. Target, right, had a surprise holiday season miss, right, and Target's been a leader again. So a lot of question marks around this Walmart report, and that to me seems like it could mean higher volatility, which is a good thing because the option pricing is also on the higher side too, right? And I guess that's what gives me a little bit of pause is just like the option pricing. Um, I feel like if there was going to be a catalyst to break this ultra tight few month consolidation, like this would be it. So maybe you look at something on the lower debit side just to see if it gets up and breaks out through like the low 120s if it's good, or if it's bad and it breaks down, then obviously there's a pretty significant gap underneath from August. So really significant catalyst, a ton of question marks. Definitely one of the more interesting reports next week. Tuesday before the open, I'm gonna kind of just lump these together. So you have a few E&P names: Concho, Devon, and Diamondback, so FANG. So overall, pretty big week for E&P names. And I'll be honest, like I really don't know what to make of the sector at this point. The action has been really bad. You can see just by like the last few weeks, right? And Diamondback occasionally moves, Concho occasionally moves, Devon occasionally moves, but really not consistent. At least not consistent enough for me to really get super interested in playing these earnings. And I'm just not sure the risk is worth the reward at this point. So I think as much as it's going to be kind of a jam-packed week for energy, I'm not on board with those names right now. Kind of want to see how maybe like the first few numbers go, and then you got a couple ones after these three. So like PXD later in the week could be an interesting one, depending on how Concho, Devin, and Fang go. Okay, Wednesday before the open, analog devices, so big semi. 5 points is what they're expecting. We've already had a lot of chip reports, and for the most part, they've been pretty good, right? Texas Instruments, which is kind of like a closely correlated peer, was solid. Didn't do a whole lot though. ADI, kind of a similar chart, and to be honest, it really looks good if it can get through 120, right? If it can get through 120, there could be a pretty significant pent-up breakout. But it's probably going to have to really deliver because Texas Instruments was kind of similar and like, kind of like a beat and inline guidance didn't do the trick. So ADI, especially after how good a lot of the chip reports have been, probably really going to have to knock it out of the park. But if they do, getting through that long-term level of resistance could lead to a pretty nice move. Pretty big pent-up breakout, so probably worth keeping an eye on. Bausch and Lomb, or Bausch Health Companies now. So 2 points is what they're pricing in here. We've traded this for a while last year, and now it's kind of like a couple month consolidation right ahead of earnings. They didn't guide the JP conference, so this should be a pretty big catalyst. Teva solid results, and that probably should be a decent sign for BHC. And I think what's most interesting is not necessarily the daily, but the weekly, right? So you can see how much potential upside there could be if the numbers are good and it breaks that 30 level, right? I mean, just a long term resistance range. So that's what's most interesting. If it can be good and trigger that breakout, because as you can see, there's quite a bit of upside potential. So that's really what's most interesting about BHC. Wingstop, so a restaurant name. 775 is what they're expecting. It hasn't acted great on earnings the past 2 quarters, though, and now it's kind of back up near its 52-week high. Not right at it, but close enough. Restaurant stocks, they really haven't been that volatile this quarter, and options are on the high side for this one, so I think I'm just going to avoid. All right, so like I mentioned before, big week for E&P names. XEC, another one. This is Wednesday after the close, and PXD. So PXD could definitely be a mover, and I kind of want to wait and see what Concho, see what Devin, see what Fang have to say, because that's really going to set the bar for PXD, and then maybe we can look at it for a trade after that. But I kind of want to see how those first reports go. But this is definitely the most interesting of the bunch, in my opinion. Also Wednesday after the close, Solar Edge. 13.5 points is what's priced in. Definitely a leader in the solar space. Stock looks great. It's been flagging above previous resistance, and last quarter was mixed, but it's come back pretty nicely, right? But it also did have a kind of like a muted response to that mixed quarter, so kind of gives me a little bit of pause there. I think any trade on this would probably be speculative. Because at 13.5 points, options are priced kind of high, especially after last quarter. It really wasn't spectacular. So I think any strategy would probably need to get risked down a bit. Stamps.com. This could be a crazy one. 17 points is what's priced in. Major wild card. Major wild card. So 2 quarters, better than feared numbers here and here. But then the 2 quarters prior to that were complete disasters, right? So it's been in a pretty long consolidation, and you can see like how significant the 100 area is, right? So it really seems like it has the recipe for an explosive move, but options are really by no means cheap, right? 17 points for an $88 stock, not cheap. But it does seem like if it's particularly good, particularly bad, 20 to 30 points either way is possible. So volatility strategy might be interesting on that one. Zillow. So 6.25 is what they're looking for this quarter on Zillow. It's been steadily moving higher. So this was what it did back in November, and it's been steadily moving higher since. And you can see that it's right at a pretty big level of resistance, above 50, and it has like another really well-defined gap above. So I'm bullish biased on this after last quarter, but definitely, I'll acknowledge that when it misses, it really tends to get crushed. So bullish bias, but that's probably more in the speculative camp, though. Plus, it's still pretty heavily shorted, too. Just something to consider. Thursday before the open. All right, so Domino's. I don't trade this very often, and I haven't really been a huge fan of the restaurant stocks for earnings this quarter, but look at how interesting this chart looks, right? I mean, you don't even need me to tell you. So 17 points is what's priced in, but you can see, I mean, just a long multi-year resistance under 300, and it really seems like if the numbers are good and it gets up through 300, there could be a real significant pent-up breakout, right? I mean, really clean, obvious long-term level of resistance here, and it doesn't always have big moves, but this setup definitely looks better than other quarters. So, I think that this is one you probably want to keep on your radar. Wix. All right, so 12.5 points is what's priced in, and I feel like I always talk about it setting up well, but then it always disappoints when the numbers come out. So, I mean, it had a nice look to it last quarter, disappointed with lower guidance. Strong again, right underneath the 52-week high, but again, it's just kind of tough to have confidence because they just always seem to kind of disappoint when they report. So I might just wait it out, see what they say. If it looks good after, maybe try like a fast swing trade on it. Okay. After the close Thursday, a few software names. Dropbox. $1.85, give or take, is what's expected there. I mean, it's just a really clear, obvious downtrend, and it hasn't broken it since 2018. There's been a few earnings when it's like been leaning on this trend, but it just seems like every time it manages to fail. So this is really all going to be about the reaction. They're going to have a clean beat. It's going to have to be a big move, and it's going to have to take out quite a few levels. Probably most importantly, like this 200-day, to really get any momentum because it's just been like steady, stair-stepping downtrend, and it's going to have to really be fantastic probably to break that pattern. Fastly, so newish IPO in the software space. 275 is what's priced in. It's kind of like an under the radar one, and it has had some big moves in the past. I feel like a strong quarter and a break of like 25 resistance, and this thing turns a corner. Decent amount of short interest, and the options really don't seem to be pricing the potential for like a pent up breakout through 25 area. So I think it's a pretty decent setup. Bullish bias on that one. Also, Zscaler, so another software name. 7.5 is what's priced in there. You can see that it's come all the way back to close the gap and is trying to break out above the 200-day. But last quarter the numbers were they were only they were decent, but the stock didn't react great. And you know, after the run it's had, like I feel like I'd almost rather wait out the numbers, see if it has maybe more of like a muted reaction, and then you can snag maybe some options for a swing trade like last quarter because we were able to catch it for a pretty nice swing trade. So I think that's probably going to be my plan with Zscaler. Puma, so also Thursday. 2.5 points is what's priced in on Puma. I'll be the first to admit this isn't a stock for everyone, but I really like trading Puma. Occasionally there's some just absolutely epic moves on earnings, so it's here. I mean, obviously it hasn't had that in a while, but also what's interesting about this quarter is just a couple weeks ago just had this huge breakout on massive volume, and it's through some pretty big levels too. So uh, after a few non-event quarters, maybe more speculative, but still think at 2.5 that if it's really good, really bad, there's still a lot of short interest. Maybe it could still be a pretty big mover even after like the big pop it had just a couple weeks ago. And also OLED. So 20.5 points is what's priced in on OLED. It's been one of the underperforming smartphone plays. Had a strong quarter back in October, right? Rallied all the way up. Now it's come all the way back down. Probably some concerns due to the coronavirus, but I feel like it might set up like similar to some of these other stocks that we've seen got hit on like the headlines and rallied back after like the numbers were either not as bad as feared, or maybe like sell the news, or sell the headline by the news, right? So the only thing with OLED is I think like any strategy would have to be longer term because it has so many levels it needs to get back through on the upside that it could just take a lot longer to develop. All right, and last but not least, Friday before the open is Deer. 8.25 ish is what they're pricing in. To me, this kind of falls into the same category as Cat. It's really just been disappointing from an earnings point of view, but the stock just super resilient. It doesn't get hit too hard and it doesn't stay down too long. I'd probably be expecting more of another mixed quarter. Um, and I guess I just really don't have the confidence that it's going to move enough to reward options. I haven't traded in a while, and to be honest, I guess I'd rather just wait for it to either get above 180 and take out resistance, or maybe get below like 150 and take out support. Then to me it gets interesting. Here, not so much, especially after Cat. Like, just don't really have a feel for it. Not that interested in it, so I'll probably just leave it alone. All right. So I hope you all have a fantastic long holiday weekend. If you're traveling, safe travels. Still plenty of names on the radar. Still plenty of volatile moves expected. So should be a busy week. All right. So again, have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you on Tuesday.